Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see a great turnout. Please continue to enjoy your lunch. I know we have some people in line, but we have a fantastic lunch program today, so we want to begin. Thank you for being part of the third Willcoxon Health Science Summit. It's a great crowd today. I've just been told we have 520 participants, so a huge turnout. And we do have a great program today. As always at the summit, we thank Willcoxon and the Willcoxon family for making this possible. It really is a great opportunity for our students, our faculty, and our community. So today we're going to have some presentations over lunch, and now we will hear from the Willcoxon Scholars. This is a group of Missouri Southern students who are participating in research projects under the mentorship of Missouri Southern faculty, made possible by gifts from the Willcoxons. It's a very special program. And I also want to thank Dr. Alicia Burris, who's on our faculty and serves as director of the program and mentors these wonderful students. This is the third year that students are supported in the research related to health and life science, and there are 5 different projects, and you will hear a brief presentation about each project. So I'd like to invite the first student to come forward and tell us a little bit about the research project.
Hello everyone, my name is Lily Rand and I had the honor of being one of the Willcoxon Scholars this year. My project is functional morphology of jaw adductor muscles in the common snapping turtle. I worked on this project with David Penning over in the biology department. First, a little bit about me. I'm a senior here at Southern who will be graduating in May with a degree in biomedical sciences on the pre-vet track. I'm hoping to go back to my home state and go to Iowa State University for master's or vet med programs following this. So a little bit more about my research project. So we studied the common snapping turtle, which obviously has a very strong bite force by its name. The really interesting thing about these animals is they're very small. This is kind of the average size of a snapping turtle head, and they can produce more bite force than a human can. If we bit down as hard as these guys, we would shatter all of our teeth and strain our muscles. So for them to do it on a common occurrence is very interesting. So we were able to send off 5 different snapping turtle heads for imaging. So we received backbone scans and CT images of these snapping turtles. So the top image there is running through a CT scan of the musculature system of a snapping turtle head. And then the bottom is a bone scan of a snapping turtle to kind of give you some visuals. Then we went and looked at the comparison of how these muscles are able to produce such strong forces and how they're to distribute that across their skulls to make sure that there's no damage done. This then can be connected back to human health by looking at different conditions that humans experience in their jaws with different kinds of strain and injuries. And so we can compare that back to hopefully come up with some new clinical options for jaw pain in humans.
Hello everyone, my name is Lisa Mufti and I'm grateful to be a part of the Willcoxon Scholars Program this year. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm at Missouri Southern majoring in biomedical sciences as a senior in the MKeep program. I plan to matriculate into KCU this fall, and I'm currently interested in ophthalmology, so this research is particularly interesting to me because it allows me to explore my career passions and interests further.
Hi everyone. My name is Mai Dorgam. I'm also part of the MKeep program. I'm a senior majoring in biomedical sciences, and I hope to start medical school at KCU this fall with Eliza. This research is important to me because it actually was the one that started my interest in neurology and the nervous system and made me passionate about pursuing that in the future as a specialty. So first, we'd like to thank the Willcoxon Scholars Program for making this research possible. Our research is about exploring the presence and origin of catecholaminergic fibers, which are sympathetic fibers within the cranial nerves of the eye orbit, with the aid of Dr. Alaberry.
So to give you some background, sympathetic innervation is essential in regulating several ocular functions, such as pupil dilation, eyelid elevation, control of intraocular pressure and blood flow, and more. These effects are typically mediated by catecholaminergic fibers, which are Th-positive fibers that transmit sympathetic signals. When these signals get disrupted, this can typically lead to neuroophthalmic conditions such as Horner syndrome and other conditions. Previous studies have shown that Th-positive fibers exist in orbital cranial nerves. However, these studies have mainly performed a qualitative analysis of these fibers rather than focusing on quantitative analysis and exploring the potential origin of these fibers. Previously, MSSU students have contributed to our study by dissecting 12 orbits from 6 cadavers and extracting cranial nerves and fibers for immunohistochemical and quantitative analysis. However, we aim to add 2 cadavers and 4 orbits to the study, focusing on specific nerves that have previously shown Th positivity in order to gain a greater understanding and perform a more accurate quantitative analysis.
We hope that our study helps in clarifying the understanding of sympathetic anatomy of the cranial nerves of the eye orbit, which would hopefully contribute to both research and clinical use, such as in discovering novel therapies for neuro-ophthalmological diseases such as Horner syndrome, which currently does not have a cure, and also in decreasing the rate of complications in eye surgery. We also hope that it helps in establishing a framework for qualitative analysis for future orbital nerve studies.
So once again, our objectives in the study are to, 1, analyze previously collected samples from previous MSSU students who contributed to the study, and 2, collect new samples to quantitatively assess the presence, distribution, and potential origin of catecholaminergic fibers in orbital cranial nerves. We invite you to come to the back after our presentations in order to get a deeper understanding of what we're working on.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kaya Gibson. I'm currently a health science major focusing in paramedicine here at MSSU. I will graduate this spring and I plan to apply to PA school. I currently am a full-time student and I have 2 PRN paramedic jobs, one way up in Jeff City and one here in Mount Vernon. I've completed this research under the guidance of my faculty mentor, Erin Tabor. She is the program director and clinical instructor of the EMS program here at MSSU. She is also a paramedic. So this project all started with the realization after working in EMS that as paramedics, we often don't arrive to the scene or to the moment an emergency happens. It is often everyday individuals, such as students, who may recognize an emergency, but often don't feel prepared to act. My research focuses on evaluating emergency preparedness, specifically in high school education, and identifying gaps in readiness and training. The goal is to help younger generations feel confident and capable in responding to emergencies. Because each year, about 350,000 cardiac arrests happen outside the hospital, and immediate CPR can double to triple the survival rates, according to the AHA. However, Missouri students only are required in high school to complete 30 minutes of CPR training. And this often does not include more common emergencies, such as seizures and allergic reactions. To explore this issue, I conducted a survey with 136 MSSU students to assess their knowledge, competence, and preparedness. My findings reveal clear gaps, but also opportunities to improve education and training. I invite you to come learn more about my research and how we can better prepare our future generations to respond to emergencies. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sanvi, and this is my wonderful partner, JRAH. and we had the privilege to be a Willcoxon Scholar this year, which means we had the chance to research something we are extremely passionate about. So our research project was centered around the topic of antibiotic resistance. Now, antibiotic resistance is a threat not for the future, but one of us today. And I would like to ask you guys a quick question. How many of us know someone or have been prescribed antibiotics before? Now, that's almost all of us. So this makes this specific project of extreme interest to us as future clinicians. Now, antibiotic resistance is especially important because today bacteria are mutating at rapid rates, and we're using antibiotics with widespread usage, which means that we cannot produce as scientists enough antibiotics, and that's why we, as our project, tried to create our own special class of antibiotic resistance. It uses the same philosophy as other antibiotics on the market, targeting something bacteria have, but we humans don't. So specifically, our project targets the bacteria enzyme that synthesizes vitamin B5. Now, we all know we have to eat our vitamins, but what is so important about vitamin B5? Vitamin B5 is used in acetyl-CoA to synthesize acetyl-CoA, and that's the key. Acetyl-CoA is so important in the usage of lipid metabolism, making fatty acids, along with energy production. And all these three things, if we can poison that in a bacterial cell with a compound and not in the human, make for a great antibiotic.
So as you can see in our picture there in the middle, our research focuses on developing a mechanism-based inhibitor of the vitamin B5 pathway in bacteria. So in the natural process of synthesis of vitamin B5, there are several proton transfers that occur to get you to the final product. However, our antibiotic would feature a fluorine instead of a hydrogen on our compound, which blocks the deprotonation step and ultimately makes it so the bacteria cannot synthesize vitamin B5 at all, which effectively would lead to the death of the bacteria. So this is especially novel because there are no current antibiotics that feature this specific pathway. So we invite you to come back and see our poster to see the research that we've been doing on this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gavin Wampler. I'm a senior here at Missouri Southern State University studying biomedical sciences, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about yeast a little bit. So over this past academic year, I've been working with Dr. Alicia Burris, and we've been studying a specific strain of yeast. It's called Petite, and these yeast have a altercation of their proteasomes, which make them unable to process unfermentable carbon sources. So in these strains of yeast, it was unknown previously if these yeast even had mitochondria, and if so, what did they look like? What was their relationship with other, or within the cell, if they had any like co-localization with proteasomes. So the goal of my study was to see, one, if these yeast had mitochondria, and if they did, was there any co-localization with the proteasomes? And what was the appearance or the morphology of these mitochondria? My future plans after Missouri Southern, I'm admitted to Oklahoma State University's medical school, so I plan to attend there next fall, and then after that I'm hoping to go into family medicine, where I plan to practice in my hometown of Jasper, Missouri. But finally, I wanted to give a big thanks to Ms. Willcoxon and the Willcoxon family for allowing us to do this. It's been great help to be able to focus on research for a whole year and be able to have a platform to talk about it with all you guys today. So thank you.
Well, thank you for those outstanding presentations. I think you get a sense of the level of research that's going on here and what students gain beyond their typical classroom and lab experiences, grappling with research. Sometimes things don't always work like they're supposed to, and that's part of the process. And I also want to thank the faculty again for serving as mentors for these students. Let's give our students a round of applause again. And they do have posters in the back of the room, so a bit later, if you want to visit with them, that'd be wonderful. Finally, over lunch here, we will hear I think a very interesting presentation that exemplifies innovation in healthcare, namely the enormous potential for drone delivery systems to address critical needs, especially in rural healthcare. Today we're having Lori Worthington, the Executive Director of the Joplin Regional Alliance for Healthcare and Health Science, talk to us about her work in collaboration with Valkyrie, and I think you will be amazed at what's going on here in Joplin. So Lori, please welcome Lori Worthington to the stage.
Those scholars are hard acts to follow. So let's see if I can get my clicker to work. If I don't know who to call. Going this way. So we are excited to be talking about this. Is this going to work? There we go. In January, we actually did kind of a launch of our drone project for rural healthcare with a demo. It was a gray day. It was very cold and icy, as I recall, and we were fortunately inside over at the football stadium. But those wind gusts that we had this morning were still no match for the drone. It was able to take off. It was able to come back down. And it worked out really great. So what we're going to talk to you about is just really the idea that innovation, paired collaboration, can really change lives. And that's the whole crux of the drone project is what if we use drones to reach rural healthcare and coordinate care closer to home for individuals and then the caregivers of those individuals. So real quickly, the Joplin Regional Alliance for Health is a collaborative of a number of leaders here in our area related to healthcare. Certainly Missouri Southern State University is one of those key leaders with health sciences and innovation. We have both of our health systems here, Mercy and Freeman, are involved, as well as our other higher education areas that teach in health and health sciences. So Crowder College, Kansas City University School of Medicine, our Farber Foundation, and then the City of Joplin, Joplin Chamber are also very involved. So it is a community collaborative. We've added Access Family Care to that collaborative and just really continue to kind of expand how we work together as a region. So we appreciate the leadership. This is Valkyrie who is really kind of our drone partner. Valkyrie has actually, their drones have been flying in Africa now for a number of years, delivering medicine and care supplies out to areas in Africa now for many, many years. Well past, I believe they've said over 20,000 hours of flight time in those drones. They purchased the drone technology and are working to deploy it here in the US. And so that's where we've kind of stepped in and said, please, deploy it here. Let us do a rural healthcare project. Make Joplin your home in the U.S. for all things related to drones and drone manufacturing. So their strategic goals are about increasing healthcare access for rural communities. The founder's father lived in rural Texas, and access to care can be challenging when you've got those distances. Most of his family still lives out in Texas on farms and ranches. Economic and workforce development and being a U.S.-based solution for that growth. Improving organ and tissue donation rates in the country is certainly a focus for them, as well as medicine delivery out into the rural areas, and then strengthening our national security. And if Ty Harmon had been able to be here with us today, he would add at this point that, like it or not, drones are an essential part of our defense as we look at the country and rolling forward. So, testing and validation in 2021, they started a project in Texas related to rural medicine. Well, fast forward that, those proof of concepts have been going on now for a number of years. A lot of great research has come from that, evidence of effectiveness and efficacy. the FAA, so when you start to fly a drone, the FAA takes notice, and so there's a lot of rules about what you do and what you don't do. So there's been a number of partnerships with them, learnings, approving operations. Any flight path for a drone at these levels has to be approved by the FAA and the routes all mapped. So fast forward to 2026. We had our drone project here in January, and next week we will be launching, Valkyrie, along with Mid-America Transplant in St. Louis, will be launching the very first drone site for healthcare in the country. It is going to be based in Raleigh, and it will have ends at both Springfield and near St. Louis. And they will be transporting tissue samples for organ donation back and forth to the lab in St. Louis so that matches can happen more quickly and so that organs don't time out, if you will, as quickly waiting, because a kidney, for example, has a window of time that it has to be matched and transplanted, and so we lose precious time right now with transporting tissues by car up and down I-44, and so we'll be able to take those to the air, and those matches happen a lot faster. So that is actually a ribbon cutting next week in Raleigh, and our project has also been kicking off with ongoing conversations and mapping processes. They talked this morning about the process and how you have to understand the process to make change and innovation, and that's one of the things we're doing is what's our process have to look like in Joplin to make this work. So that's happening in 2026. We're also working to move manufacturing of the drones to the U.S. and begin to have a U.S. drone manufacturing for these drones. And that we're saying, here, put that in Joplin. Please put that in Joplin. So we're having those conversations. The drone didn't get to make it here today. It's getting ready for Raleigh and couldn't get down. But if you want to kind of picture one, imagine something the length of your table is about the length of the drone. It's got a body that has a spot that the battery goes in, and we'll come back to that in a second. And then it's got lanes for the propellers to go on, and then a place for the cargo. So it's about that size, and we'll get some here at future events so you all get to see them. Maybe we'll even let them fly. Every community deserves healthcare access, and that's really the cusp of this whole rural healthcare initiative. Right now, actually, the U.S. Statistics say that about 97% of the U.S. is actually rural. When you look at the data and you look at numbers, 61 million Americans are living in rural areas, and that means they have a higher mortality rate because they are further from care. Their access to immediate, rapid care is declined. So, and it takes, many of them 50 or more miles to get to a healthcare resource. So as we think about the drone project, we're thinking about how do we keep healthcare resources open in rural America? Has anybody heard about rural hospitals closing or being on the brink of closing? This is an opportunity to help keep them open. This map shows you right now what the predicted at-risk closures are of closing in the next 2 or 3 years for hospitals in these states. And this is the 4 states area that Joplin serves. You can see Kansas and Missouri are both, right around 30. Oklahoma is not much better. Arkansas is doing a slightly bit better, but I think they also have fewer hospitals. So there's the drone. So the thought of this whole project is, what if our hospitals here in Joplin, as an example, what if we were able to deploy rural care back out to the rural areas? So if someone is needing care, they're able to come in versus us having to, or we're able to send them the medicines out to them versus them having to come in for care every single treatment or every single moment of their care. So what this does is it creates a model that lets us create reimbursements back out to those rural clinics. So instead of the facility charge for maybe chemotherapy treatment happening here in Joplin, maybe it's happening at the rural clinic in the middle of Kansas, and that person was able to go there for that care, and it was a 15-minute drive instead of a 90-minute drive. they will actually have a better outcome for their care because they're not having to do as much transport, be as tired. But we need to create a reimbursement model that allows us to make sure that clinic gets that cash, gets that reimbursement, that they can pay for keeping the complex care there. And then that we also then make sure we maximize that trip on the way back. So what are the labs we can bring back in? What are things that we can bring back into the hospitals for maybe more rapid analysis and rapid care? The other piece of this is revenue streams potentially is related to rural emergency medicine. So imagine being able to send supplies, whole blood, supplies that they need to a crash site and get them there quickly enough that they can be administered on the site before the ambulance trip to maybe a triage center that they need or a trauma center. So it's kind of the thought is creating reimbursable models that allow this money to stay in rural America and take care of people closer to home. There's a quick picture of the drone. It actually can fly 80 miles an hour is what it's approved for on a routine flight. It actually can fly much faster than that. If it's an emergency, the FAA has authorized it to fly at 125 miles an hour. It can actually fly much faster than that, but with high winds, they kind of keep it at about 125. So, but you can imagine they're also flying overhead, right? So they're not having to drive on the crooked country roads. They're able to fly straight to that flight path. Did I get there? So as we transform rural access, we're thinking about increasing the access to care for those patients who are in rural areas. We're thinking about improving the caregiver's quality of life, because now the caregiver may not have to take that entire day out of their trip to drive them in, wait all day, drive them home, then get them settled. And for a caregiver, a trip in for cancer treatment may end up being a 12 to 14 hour day for the caregiver. So a lot of opportunities there. Improving the mental health of both the caregiver and the patient as well, obviously, is an opportunity. And then creating these new reimbursement models, because right now there's not a reimbursement for drone transit for healthcare products and services. So creating that reimbursement model and making sure we have the evidentiary proof that this is cost effective, that it's care effective, and that it can really make a huge difference for patients, caregivers, and rural healthcare clinics. So right now what's happening is, we have here, just kind of looking at Missouri, about 1.5 million of Missouri's population is in rural America, rural Missouri, America. 576 rural healthcare clinics, many of them are at risk for closure. So we want to try to help solve this. And you can see kind of the circles. These are, in the bigger pictures, places, the bigger kind of icons where hubs have been talked about. And as the drones have about a 200-mile diameter that they can fly within those, from those hubs, that you can see that we can quickly cover most of Missouri. We now have a conversation going on with Kansas Medicaid about how we maybe help with Kansas. So you can see with Rolla's hub opening and then Joplin's, we will have I-44 completely covered with drone access to be able to take medicines out for emergency medicine. Drones also bring some really great workforce and educational opportunities, which we're excited about. There's a lot of research. Every drone hub will actually have 2 drones dedicated to education and research. So that means that the research projects for Missouri Southern's students get to be have some drone involvement. And then certainly the research that we're doing to prove the efficacy of these and confirm the research and the data that we need for CMS to approve creating reimbursement codes also will involve research components here with Missouri Southern's faculty and teams. So as we think about this, every hub is going to have someone who gets that drone ready to fly, loads the cargo, unloads it, maintains it. It's predicted to be 10 to 12 new jobs every place there's a hub. And that, if we think about rural America and we put a hub in Fort Scott, Kansas, for example, that's 10 or 12 new jobs with benefits coming into that community. And so it's a commitment that Valkyrie has made to the model that we don't just want to move things to rural America, we want to help keep rural America vital and open, not only in healthcare, but in their economies. We'll also be doing K through 12 STEM education, making sure that we're touching the school districts and their communities to let them know about drones and why they're there. Really kind of setting the stage for all the opportunities that science and learning bring. And it's, certainly all of the healthcare education that we'll do alongside that, and then just the general flight research. Who doesn't want to kind of be a drone pilot a little bit, right? And fortunately, things like video games let us do that without crashes. They have a goal of being able to increase regional college participation and see that increase because we're kind of promoting STEM learning, STEAM learning. So we will continue to do that. The other true effort there is if you have a drone that is flying over your community at 400 feet above the surface, you want people to know that drone is okay, that it's safe, that it's not doing something bad, and that, as if Ty were here, would say, and please don't shoot it down, right? Please don't shoot it down. So we will be doing that education with them as well. Finally, as we look at sustainability, one of the really interesting things about the federal funding that's going on for rural healthcare is it has a component in it about sustainability. And this 5-year project in funding to rural healthcare is about making sure that we create sustainable futures for the things that we're doing. And Valkyrie and this drone project is very focused on creating a sustainable pathway forward by getting reimbursement codes, by creating ways that revenues flow back to rural healthcare and can help keep it open. And so there's a lot of effort going on with studies and making sure that we have all of that work done. The goal is that by the end of 2027, we have created enough data, we have enough evidence to formally request a HCPCS code for anybody in healthcare. You might know what that is, but actually request that 5-digit code that has a number, maybe it's a series of codes, that has reimbursement methodologies tied to that gets into the healthcare coding system that all those EHRs and billing systems know how to use, so that we can then have Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services actually issue approvals and include fee schedules in that so that we're sure everybody gets paid. Because once it gets in the CMS system as something that's allowed, approved, and paid, it can flow to every insurance payer, it can flow across the country as a reimbursement model. So that's the opportunity that we're really chasing here, is looking to that 2027. So a lot of research, a lot of number crunching will be happening in the IRBs here at Missouri Southern as we do that over the next year and a half or so. Dr. Billings was one of the participants in the Texas studies. You see him riding his horse to go pick up something from the drone that landed outside their little town in Texas. And one of the things that the quote's not going to show up in this version, but one of the kind of premises is remembering that we don't want anyone's life or health to be at risk because of the zip code they live in. We want everyone to be able to have access to care and timely care and the right care. And that's really the driver behind this healthcare reimbursement project. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Larry. Very exciting. So to wrap up, 3 ideas. One is it takes a team to plan and execute a summit like today. A lot of hands have been involved. Melinda Brown, I understand, was chasing signs in the wind across campus earlier this morning. And I believe some of our folks from facilities were there opening doors to the building because it turns out it was very hot yesterday and we wanted to make sure it was cool today. So I want to ask the planning committee to stand for a round of applause, and we're just grateful for everyone who helped make this happen. Second idea is the power of philanthropy. Our being here, those scholars having that experience, having the summit, inviting outstanding speakers to our campus is only possible because, in this case, the generosity of Dot Willcoxon and her family. And it is a reminder of the power of generosity and what it can make possible. So thank you again, Dot and family. And finally, who can deny that the future is bright on a day like today? You hear our speakers, you hear about the technology, if used wisely and ethically, what that could do for patient care, for quality of lives across our communities and across the world. And how can you not be inspired when you hear from students and think about their future and how that will impact all of us? So it's been a great day. Thank you for being here. The next session begins at 1:30. The students are anxious to speak to some folks. Have a great day and go Lions.